We're going to do lesson 7, and this is arrests, 208 arrests. So we're going to start out with some basic rules of the law of arrest. This is 20801. So a violation is an offense, but not a crime. So offense includes all three: felony, misdemeanor, and violations. A crime only includes felonies and misdemeanors. So arrest without a warrant. This is a summary arrest, right? Based on reasonable cause to believe, what we call probable cause. So crimes in or out of your presence, anywhere in New York State, and you can go beyond New York State if you're in close pursuit. Violations have to be in your presence and committed in your geographical area of employment. You can arrest in a county of occurrence or adjoining county. You can go beyond adjoining county if you're in close pursuit, but you can't go over the state line for a violation. Okay, and this is all the stuff that we learned when we were in the police academy, but you haven't looked at it in years. So there's nothing wrong with having a quick little review so you understand where your arrest powers come from. Arrest with a warrant addressed to an UMOS or their department as follows: New York City Criminal Court, District Court, or a Superior Court judge sitting in a lower court. Anytime, anywhere in New York State. City Court, not New York City, but like a town or village court. Anytime, but only in the county of issuance or adjoining county. Don't forget that New York City is considered all one county for these legal purposes. Also, the whole city is your geographical area of employment. And we're going to look at 20802, arrest and removal to department facility. And there's something interesting in here that I want you to take a look at. You see the steps here: arresting officer, be tactical and safe, inform perp of authority and cause of the reason why you're arresting them, unless he resists, flees, or it's impractical. Okay, no problem. The next thing says ascertain if a child is present using all available info. Okay, now, if that's true, if a child's present, you see here in the packet that we gave you, this is listed all underneath this here. But ascertain if a child is present using all available info. And then all of this has to do with making this great, as least a damaging experience for a child as possible. Because the true steps here are: be tactical, safe, informed perp of authority and reason for arrest, unless he flees or it's impractical. Ascertain if a child is present, and immediately inquire if medical or psychiatric treatment is needed, and ensure body-worn camera is activated when asking. Request medical service as appropriate. Handcuff prisoner with hands behind his back. Rear cuff even if pregnant, absent exceptional circumstances, like medical emergency, visibly pregnant, difficult to rear cuff, poses no immediate threat, whatever. Immediately notify immediate supervisor of arrest and provide pertinent details. But you see, there's a detail here: ascertain if child is present using all available info. And then this entire box here is off this line. So arrest parent or guardian outside of the child's sight and hearing if possible. Only display a weapon, gun or conductive energy weapon, etc., in a child's sight when it's necessary and consistent with department policy and officer safety. This may traumatize them, so reassure child as soon as possible. Make every effort to avoid the use of force to separate a child from their parent or guardian. Permit parent or guardian to speak to the child prior to transport. If not practical, explain using appropriate language that the parent or guardian will be safe. Child did nothing wrong and will be safe and cared for. Allow the kid to take a familiar object like a teddy bear ascertain child's medical, behavioral, psychological conditions, and get medical attention required. If child is present or not, let parent or guardian choose a babysitter as long as it's not a drug addict or somebody dangerous. Assist parent or guardian getting numbers out of their mobile phone to arrange for childcare. If an alternative cannot be ID'd or can't respond in a reasonable time, comply with 215.01, no problem. After arrest and prior to arraignment in criminal court, offer to make a referral to a partner organization for child services, right? If they consent, make the referral and put the offer and response in your activity log. So that's right. All of this stuff here, all of it is all if there's a child present during an arrest, if you can believe that, right? It's really unbelievable. So if a child is present when you make an arrest, you're supposed to be doing all this stuff. Now, whether or not you do it is not the issue. The issue is whether or not you know it for test day, right? In real life on patrol, I don't care whether or not you do this. But my point is, right, we're here to help you pass the test. This is an awful lot to remember to pass a test, right? And so because it's relatively new, you should read it, try to commit as much of it as you can to memory, because the steps here really go from be tactical and safe, ascertain if there's a child present, immediately acquire if the person needs medical attention or psychiatric treatment, and put it on body-worn camera and activating, request EMS, handcuff prisoner, notify immediate supervisor of arrest, and provide pertinent details. Those are really the steps. This entire detour here, okay, off ascertain if a child is present, all of these things are connected to this second bullet, all right? So take a good look at that. Make sure you study it. A lot of stuff here about a child. It appears that you're bending over backwards to make sure that this child is not traumatized. So consider that when you get a question on test day. Read all this stuff and, go out of your way on the question to make sure that this child's not traumatized, I guess. Now, we're still on arrest removal to department facility. And so now these are the steps for immediate supervisor. Now we go back and forth from the cop to the supervisor to the desk officer back to the cop, right? But we're giving you the steps sort of in order, the way they happen, because we think that makes more sense, okay? So to that end, here are some steps for the immediate supervisor. Respond as appropriate and designate a UMOS to get name, rank, tax, command of UMOS present at the scene and have them ascertain if those UMOS have body-worn cameras and if those body-worn cameras were activated. That's an unbelievable step. Don't forget about that. So you're the immediate supervisor. You're supposed to show up and verify the arrest, but this is what your job is as a sergeant. Somebody comes over the air and says they have one under arrest. You're going to show up and designate a cop to get the name of every UMOS that was present. Find out if they have body-worn cameras and find out if the cameras were on. That's right. It's a brave new world, folks. Direct all UMOS on the scene to forward their digital activity logs to the arresting officer. Now, a lot of that has to do with discovery, the new discovery statutes, okay? Arresting officer, bring person to arrest facility, juvenile to room specified for interrogation, and that room is listed in the command library, and also the juvenile desk knows where your juvenile room is in your precinct if you don't know. Tell desk officer of the charges and if force was used during the arrest. Immediately upon arrival at command, complete captions on prisoner pedigree card and give to desk officer. Remain with prisoner at all times unless relieved by arrest processing officer. Now remember, if the perp ingests drugs, go directly to the nearest hospital, never to the station house. Promptly tell patrol supervisor and communications, that's radio, 3 times. Upon observing the ingestion of drugs, when transport to the hospital is initiated, and when you're 84 at the hospital. And that's not because the job doesn't trust you. That's to stop us from civil lawsuits, like you dragged your feet, taking the guy to the hospital, and that's why he died. So as soon as you see him ingest drugs, tell Central and tell the patrol supervisor, put him in the car, transport him to the hospital, let him know when you're on the way, and then when you're 84 at the hospital. Okay, now we're still on arrest for arrest and removal to department facility, and now the desk officer has a bunch of duties, okay? This is on page 2 in your packet. So desk officer, have AO prepare pedigree card and immediately put that information into the command log. File pedigree card by date and time of arrival at the command, not arrest time. File pedigree card by date and time of arrival in the command. Put time of arrival and time of arrival of arresting officer and assisting MOS in command log, interrupted patrol log, and the roll call. So AO and assisting MOS, we're assuming this is a sector. Like if they come in, you put both of them in the command log, in the interrupted patrol log, and on the roll call. Determine validity of arrest. Void arrest if not valid. Notify CO duty captain if it's an off-duty arrest. Now, of course, the scope statement says AO supervisor verifies the arrest before transporting, but the desk officer verifies those not verified at the scene. Okay? Direct arresting officer to thoroughly search prisoner in your presence. If prisoner is wearing a religious head cover, comply with 208-83. Verify identification by satisfactory documentary proof, preferably government-issued identification. Have the AO inform them that knowingly lying regarding their date of birth, name, and address with intent is a B misdemeanor. Ensure prisoner is afforded a reasonable opportunity to acquire ID. Count perp's money. The desk officer counts the money. He doesn't delegate an MOS to do that. You don't let the person do it himself. The desk officer counts the money. Enter the amount in the command log and return to prisoner. If there's no DAT, perp can keep $100 or less. More than $100 must be vouchered. Enter amount kept and voucher number for the rest in the command log. Direct arresting officer to remove prisoner to arrest processing area or juvenile room. Direct arrest processing officer to assist arresting officer and direct arresting officer to remain with the prisoner at all times unless relieved by the arrest processing officer. Ensure arresting officer signs affidavit supporting deposition before resuming assignment or completing tour. If prisoner placed alone in the cell for any reason, desk officer must ensure a member of the service monitors the prisoner closely. So now we're going to take a look at this preferred name and where it goes. So let's expand this a little bit so we can see it here. Okay. For booking, write the name and gender from the license, permit, non-driver photo ID. If they have a preferred name, it goes in 3 places. Defendant's name section of the movement slip, prefaced by preferred name, nickname, alias, or maiden name box on the online booking, prefaced by P. So it would be P and then their name, their preferred name. And it goes on the prisoner pedigree card. Okay, so this is just weird enough to get a question on. Okay, so make sure you know where the preferred name goes. Nickname, alias, maiden name of the box on the online booking, prefaced by P. Okay, this is a different patrol guide section now. This is 208-03, arrest processing. So let's take some looks at arresting officer. It does go back and forth from arresting officer to desk officer and so forth. So let's take a look at this. You can see my pages are separate here, 3 and 5. I took some stuff from page 5 of the booklet and put it here where it made sense for the purposes of doing this video. Okay, so arresting officer. Immediately field search and frisk prisoner and adjacent vicinity. If arrestee surrenders at a police facility, AO may request immediate supervisor to not use cuffs after the arresting officer and the boss consider potential threat to arresting officer, prisoners, and others, and escape potential. So basically, if the guy comes in, you don't have to cuff him as long as you get permission from the boss. If interrogating a perp, then read Miranda warnings. If juvenile perp, notify real-time crime center, juvenile desk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the parent or guardian immediately. Truancy not normally charged, but if arrest on another charge, you may add it. You also may frisk and cuff. If perp or parent or guardian of juvenile appears to have difficulty understanding or communicating in English, or appears to be hearing impaired, comply with 21290 language line, right? Request assistance from the detective squad to cook the burgers. Here is one of the acronyms that we provide for you. Excellent for an index card to request assistance from the squad for burglary, unusual crime, robbery, grand larceny, homicide, assault, or serious crime. Prepare arrest documents as necessary. Give complainant name of perp, charges, arresting officer name, precinct of occurrence, invoice numbers, and location of court. So this is something that you don't want to get wrong in the exam because this is unusual. Nobody thinks that this is true, but it is true. Give the complainant the name of perp. You know that you're going to give him the charges, the AO's name, right? I'm your arresting officer here. Give me a call. This is where you're supposed to be tomorrow at court or whatever, right? But everyone gets nervous when it comes time to give the complainant the perp's name. Okay, but it's true. So give complainant name of perp, charges, AO's name, precinct of occurrence, invoice numbers, location of court. Okay, you might get a test question on the phone calls. Sometimes they hit it, sometimes they don't. So advise prisoner 18 or older of the right to make 3 phone calls at no charge. One call is to anywhere in the United States, Puerto Rico. Remaining calls are anywhere in New York City. So he gets 1 long distance call. Don't allow the call if the call is going to defeat the ends of justice, right? If he's going to tip off another perp, you have to use your common sense. Let them call to check on the status and well-being of their child. That was added in with all this child stuff from the previous page. AO make the call if perp is incapacitated by alcohol or drugs. That's always been there. AO call or request sign language interpreter or telecommunication relay service to assist if call is to a person with a hearing or speech disability. You don't just say, oh, sorry, we can't help you. Dial 711 for the TRS operator. So sometimes they go to this call stuff. Sometimes they don't. Just give it a good look. Make sure that you know it because sometimes they go to it. So we're still in arrest processing, and now we've moved on to the desk officer. Immediately determine desk officer if the prisoner is a high escape risk by interview and background check. If so, assign to UMOS. Don't blow that off because if they give that to you on an exam, you're supposed to know that you have to assign 2 uniformed members of the service. Obviously, factors to consider, you know this, you don't need to be taught this. Seriousness of the crime, unwilling to identify themselves, forcibly resisted, has history or has made threats of violence, escape weapons. They have a warrant or criminal history checks, particularly in the domain awareness system, and take a look at their past police contacts. More responsibilities for the desk officer here. If mobility, speech, or hearing or mental disability, use appropriate aids and make reasonable attempt to notify a relative or a friend, but the arresting officer or UMOS investigating documents the notification attempts. Have a non-evidence vehicle or conveyance safeguarded if appropriate. Question AO on the use of force if applicable. Believe it or not, there's no mention of putting this in the command log. So apparently you ask them if they used force, but you don't have to document it anywhere in the command log. That seems strange, but that's the way the book is written. Note perp's physical mental condition in the command log. Ensure medical treatment is provided if necessary. If prisoner is transported to or escapes from a hospital, direct AO to immediately notify Health and Hospitals Corporation Police, or if no Health and Hospitals Corporation Police available, hospital security. However, when a desk officer has an AO request a secure location for that prisoner, that request is not made to Health and Hospital Corporation or security. It's made to the emergency room staff. If off-duty arrest, notify CO duty captain. If other agency, that agency will be notified. Direct arresting officer to thoroughly search perp in your presence. Direct arresting officer to ask regarding uncared for dependents. Make a command log entry with the results. So you ask them, do you have children at home that need to be cared for? And the desk officer is supposed to make an entry about the answer. But you don't ask them, you direct the AO to ask them. And then as the desk officer, you make a command log entry with the answer. Now we move on to property. Desk officer, cause the following property to be removed. Unlawful and evidence. Obviously, these two get vouchered, right? Lawfully carried but dangerous or might facilitate escape, deface or damage property, attempt or commit suicide or assault, has glass, sharp edge, belt, ties, shoelaces, drawstrings, right? Pens, all that stuff we have to take. Do these get vouchered? The patrol guide is not clear. These could be nail clippers, magic markers, shoelaces, but if it's considered prisoner personal property, then voucher. If temporarily removed but not held in police custody, give them an itemized receipt of what you took. If intox or unconscious, take personal property other than clothes, like their ID card, their credit or debit card, right? Legal medication, including methadone, voucher all of that for safekeeping, even if DAT or voided, and put in property security envelope. Give perp prisoner finder owner copy as receipt. Make medical treatment of prisoner form to alert detention facility. Return to owner if released on DAT. Okay, arrest voided, etc. Otherwise, sent to property clerk as usual. So if they got a DAT, or basically if you're going to let them go, if you got a DAT or you're going to void the arrest, you can return to owner the property. Just give it back to them right there. Otherwise, you have to send it to the property clerk in the usual manner. Okay, NYPD issued documents. These are department property that do not get vouchered unless the item itself is evidence. So ID card of retired UMOS, Transit Housing NYPD, forward to Human Resources Division with the report of the facts. Auxiliary Police Shield, Civil Defense Shield or ID, forward to Auxiliary Police Section with report of the facts. NYPD issued press card, forward to DCPI with a report of the facts. Handgun license or rifle and shotgun permit, forward to the CO of the License Division, regardless of charge. Okay, so remember, these things are department property. We don't voucher these unless somebody used, like an ID card of an MOS to commit a crime, then that's evidence. Okay, but if you just arrest somebody and they have it on them and we're taking it, then you give it to Human Resources Division. All right, we're still on arrest processing here, and now we go back to arresting officer. So, arresting officer, notify relative or friend if less than 19, admitted to hospital of unsound mind, right? They're an EDP. So, notify friend or relative if less than 19, admitted to the hospital or an EDP. This is a specific list of 3 things notify relative or a friend. If your perp is less than 19, admitted to the hospital, or of unsound mind. First, try to call a relative or friend. Desk officer make command log entry of notification, name, address, relationship. If unable to notify, then the AO should notify precinct detective squad, make a missing persons report, okay? Missing persons squad, and make a missing persons report. Comply with 21407, cases for legal action if applicable, okay? Do D-all check through Finest for 16 license plates or altered VIN. Comply with 20872, obtain prisoner DNA if he owes DNA for inclusion into the New York State DNA database. Deliver the paperwork to the desk officer. So let's take a look at 20805, General Search Guidelines. So we're going to give these headers, right, like frisk field search and then police facility search, just to help you keep them separate in your mind, right? So field or frisk or field search, immediately after apprehension, before or after cuffing. A methodical external body examination is made by sliding the hands over the body, feeling for weapons, objects, with special attention to the waistband, armpit, collar, and groin area. Unusual objects are removed. Gender does not matter here. Okay? That's on the street. A police facility search, same gender, gender does matter. Search of person and clothes, same gender as defendant. Removal of outer garments are permitted, including wigs, ties, shoes, socks, wallet, handbags. If arrestee has a mobility disability requiring a wheelchair, scooter, etc., rear cuff in the seat, frisk lower body by sliding hands up each leg and under buttocks, palms up. Okay. For the device itself, wheelchair, slide hands and palms down under the butt, under the over the accessible areas. Then transport arrestee to an Americans with Disabilities Act compliant precinct. I have no idea if they'll ask you that or not, but it just pays to know it. Okay. So we're going to talk about something very important. This is the strip search. I have a couple of pages in the PowerPoint slide here just on this. Okay, it's not a sure thing, but it's very, very likely that you get a question on a strip search. Okay, we get sued over this. The department gets big time lawsuits over it. Cases are thrown out over it. So they want to know if you know what you're doing. You're going to be a supervisor when it comes to a strip search. So I have a couple of pages just on this. I'm going to go over this because this is very, very important. So let's take it slow so that we could cover everything, okay? Strip search, authority, documentation, and justification. Any search where undergarments such as bra or underwear and or private areas are exposed or clothing is removed, lifted up, or pulled down to expose undergarments or private areas is considered a strip search. You need authority to do it. It's not routine. Only with the knowledge and approval of the AO's immediate supervisor or borough court section supervisor. Arresting officer must describe the factual basis for the request to the above supervisor. The approving supervisor is responsible for ensuring the strip search is conducted properly. No strip search will be conducted once a decision is made to void an arrest or release on a summons. No subsequent search unless reasonable belief that a subject has acquired a weapon or contraband after the strip search. So no subsequent strip search. If you already did one and you got authorization for it, you're not allowed to do it twice unless you can articulate that since you did the first strip search, they got their hands on something else. If you can't articulate that clearly, then you're not allowed to do a second strip search. Justification for strip search. AO must articulate reasonable suspicion that defendant may be concealing a weapon, evidence, or contraband in such a manner that previous search methods did not discover. So reasonable suspicion beyond the probable cause for the arrest. You got to make sure you know all this because strip search is something they go to all the time. I don't know if you'll get it, but they ask all these little specific areas of approval and probable cause. So if there's a disagreement between a desk officer and the arresting officer's supervisor from an outside command approving the strip search, the desk officer will notify the precinct CO duty captain, who will make the final decision. Okay, so where do you document it? Documentation in the command log, rank, name, and command of the supervisor authorizing the search, and of the MOS performing the search, name of the prisoner, basis for the search, and the results, including negative results. Now, there's a little italicized page here, italicized phrase here, which I find interesting. It says, if the gender of the officer assigned to conduct the search differs from the gender requested by the arrestee, the desk officer or supervisor supervising the search shall make a detailed entry in the command log regarding the factors considered in assigning a member to conduct the search and identities of the uniformed members who actually conduct the search, right? So why would somebody request? It's basically if the arrestee requests the opposite sex to strip search them, okay? There could be some like gender reassignment things there. So you just have to make a detailed command log entry. So let's talk about where it's documented. On the OLBS narrative section, the supervisor authorizing and command log page number. You put it in your activity log. The desk officer directs the member to make an entry. And in the prisoner movement slip, on the prisoner movement slip, strip searched and command log page number in the detention alert section. This whole page is very, very important. If you're watching this on video, I suggest that you roll back and listen to it again. First, we talked about the authority to conduct a strip search. Now, this is actually the method, like where you do it. Okay? Method. Secure area in the utmost privacy. Should not be necessary to touch the body, but you may touch the hair. Gender privacy. If gender is not apparent or arrestee objects to the gender of the UMOS doing the searching, desk officer or supervisor supervising the search assign UMOS of the gender requested, consistent with UMOS safety and availability. Remember, make a detailed command log entry if the gender of the officer assigned differs from that requested by the arrestee. Only UMOS reasonably necessary to conduct a search should be present, so no peeping toms, okay? Under no circumstances shall UMOS conduct searches for the purposes of determining gender, nor ask questions about arrestee's anatomy without reasonable basis for asking. Now, a cavity search. Under no conditions shall a body cavity search be conducted by an MOS. If pursuant to a strip search, an object is visually detected in a body cavity, immediately notify desk officer. Object will not be removed without a search warrant. Once warrant obtained, you must seek assistance of a medical professional in order to remove. Now, I'm going to tell you this on the video. When we say cavity search, it's okay. I know what you're thinking because I'm thinking the same thing, right? All the dirty parts. Okay, I hope I made you laugh just then. But you should know that on a prior exam, DCAS had a question where there was something in a defendant's belly button. That's right. The defendant had an innie belly button. There was something in the belly button, and that was considered a body cavity. So it's not just the dirty parts that are covered up by your underwear. Okay? They wrote a question. I don't remember if it was the last sergeant's exam or the lieutenant's exam, but one of those exams had a question where the body cavity was a belly button. So sometimes you have to think outside the box and try to imagine how they're going to come at you. So this is a true story. Belly button was the body cavity on a prior exam. Just consider that. Okay, now we're going to take a look at 208-83. This is religious head coverings. Arresting officer. Inform the perp that cover must be temporarily removed and searched. Advise that it will be done in private by the same gender. Search for a weapon or contraband. Use tactical, handheld metal detector if available as appropriate. Do not remove for safekeeping the way you would do belts and shoelaces, neckties, etc., unless two things. There's an articulable reason based on articulable facts, then known to AO that the cover is likely to be dangerous to life or can be used to harm himself or others, and permission from the desk officer to retain it when consistent with personal safety and or prisoner safety. Desk officer, approve or disapprove removal and retention for safekeeping or evidence. Provide temporary cover when removing and retaining cover for safekeeping or evidence. I have no idea how you're supposed to get one of those. Note says voucher as evidence if religious head covering is material to the investigation. Command log entry with reason if done for safekeeping or if it's disapproved. Now remember, the procedure statement says when an arrestee is wearing a cover. So by deduction, this does not pertain to stops like in investigative encounters. We're going to continue with religious head coverings when we're talking about taking photographs. So photographing for an online arrest or a DAT. Arresting officer, take photo with cover on. Ensure the oval of the face, eyes, nose, mouth, forehead, cheeks, and chin is visible. Covers that obscure the oval of the face may be removed to expose the oval of the face. No uncovered photos unless reasonable suspicion of a distinguishing feature not otherwise fully visible with the head cover in place. Hair, color, tattoos, piercing, visible injuries, that is of investigative value to the current investigation or arrest, or there's reasonable suspicion that they committed the crime outside their residence while they weren't wearing the head cover. If you must take uncovered photo, transport to borough court section will be done in private by the same gender. Uncovered photo will not be taken at the command of arrest. That's worth remembering for your exam. An uncovered photo will not be taken at the command of arrest. Desk officer, if uncovered photo must be taken, notify borough court section supervisor and make command log entry with reason and name of borough court section supervisor notified. Inform borough court section, doesn't say the supervisor here, of the gender to have an MOS of the same gender available to take the photo. Direct the arresting officer or the escorting officer to transport to borough court section as necessary to complete the arrest process. All right, we're going to move on to 208-07, photographs, and 208-08, finger and palm prints. UMOS, such as the arresting officer or arrest processing officer, photograph, fingerprint, and palm print prisoners as follows: felony, penal law misdemeanor, or other misdemeanor if previous conviction raises current charge to a felony. all juvenile offenders 15 and under for Mark Bar Mac plus gun offenses, and adolescent offenders, that's 16 and 17, for any felony. Other juveniles 11 and 12 for A and B felonies, 13 and older, any felony. You may print or photo if unable to get ID, believe ID given is not accurate, or believe that they're wanted by another agency for another offense. Official department photos are only taken by a member of the photo unit, which means they get taken downtown at Central Booking, which also means they don't get a DAT. So you may DAT a hospitalized prisoner charged with a photographable misdemeanor without photos. So now we're going to look at 20809. These are the rights of persons taken into custody. UMOS, when a defendant is in custody and we question him, we must give Miranda warnings. Okay, so that is simple word arithmetic. Custody plus interrogation equals Miranda. That's it. Which means you can question him if they're not in custody, right? Or custody is determined by the subject, what a reasonable man would think. So even if he's not cuffed, he may still be in custody, right? Because custody is determined by what the subject thinks, not what we think. We could say that he's not in custody, but if you're surrounding him with 5 cops, then it's going to be the functional equivalent of custody, and then you should have given him Miranda. So in other words, in the case law that involves custody and interrogation, custody is determined by what the subject thinks, not what we think. So it goes by a reasonable man standard. Would a reasonable man believe that he's in custody based on the situation? If you put me in an interrogation room, close the door, and sit in front of the door, no judge is going to believe that I wasn't in custody. If you say, no, he wasn't in custody, he was free to go at any time. Right, but what did he think? Did he think he was free to go at any time? Because that's what matters. So when a defendant is in custody and we question him, we must give Miranda. Explain parts not understood and cease questioning if the perp asks for an attorney or wants to remain silent. The invocation of counsel and the request to remain silent are 2 different things. The invocation of counsel cannot be undone. It's indelible. Once he asks for an attorney, he cannot speak to you. He cannot now waive an attorney except in an attorney's presence. If he asks to remain silent on his own volition, like on his own merit, he can say, okay, I'll talk to you now. So he can unring that bell. He can't unring the attorney bell. If difficulty with English or hearing impaired, comply with 212.90 or 212.104. For prisoner, preferred method is bilingual employee. Language line, whatever, for interrogation, certified member of language program. Command log entry made when interpretation service is used. Desk officer, if attorney is present, ask defendant if he wants to see an attorney. If attorney doesn't know the client's name, then no interview, okay, because that makes him an ambulance chaser. Allow interview in the muster room for a reasonable amount of time under UMOS observation. Ensure that nothing is passed. Enter an attorney visit on the online booking or arrest report supplement. Name, address, phone number of attorney. If interview conducted, time attorney arrived and departed, and the identity of the person who retained the attorney. So maybe the lawyer was called by his mother or something, and you're going to put her name down. Now we're going to go over something that is very important and highly testable and has been tested many times. Now, this is a confusing list. This is the 20813, the arrest report supplement. But I'm sorry to say, you have to know this. Like, you're going to have to come up with some way that you're going to remember this, even if you have to write it a bunch of times, because arrest report supplements do come up on exams. I don't think you ever get away from it. It's on the sergeant's exam and the lieutenant's exam, not so much for captain. Okay, so let's read them. Let's read them slow so you hear them from me, and then you're going to have to come up with a way to memorize them, particularly since the three that I've highlighted here are in the procedure as saying made by UMOS, but then the other procedures, as you can see here, say that the desk officer does them, right? This says procedure made by UMOS. So the uniform member of the service is supposed to do all this, but desk officer makes these in 208, 1730, and 210.01. Change in charge. The desk officer does that one. Child release from detention facility. Change of homicide. Clothing of homicide victim to the FID lab. New charge prior to arraignment in same county. Don't make an arrest report supplement if it's in a different county. That's mostly for the detective squad. Circumstances of an additional bribery charge if the original AO is not the UMOS bribed. Okay, so you don't drop a new online for an additional bribery. Let's say he tries to bribe. The UMOS that arrested him, and then the transporting UMOS was somebody different. Rearrest on a bench warrant. Released, right? Voided arrests. Previously identified prisoner is now identified. Previously unidentified prisoner is identified. Visit by an attorney. Defendant released to collision investigation squad. For seriously injured, likely to die, DOA, or critically injured vehicle investigation. Not enough space in the narrative of the online booking. Hospitalized prisoner, visit by authorized person. You do one for all visits after release, and this is one of the ones where it says the desk officer does it. Hospitalized defendant is DAT'd. This says 20830 says the desk officer does that one. Okay, and then if a defendant is arrested for an additional charge. Okay, so the arrest report supplement is very important. You see they say that UMOS does it, and then in these three specific instances here, it says that the desk officer is doing that one. So you're going to have to write this down or study this in a way that you're going to remember it, because it will come up. And if you don't get it on the exam, you're just giving away a point. So make sure you know the arrest report supplement. Very important for your sergeant and lieutenant exams. So now we're going to move on to page 21 and 22 in your booklet. This is three short procedures. We're just going to cover them quickly. So 20874 is arrest processing of persons wanted for multiple incidents. Arresting officer, confer with a detective squad member concerned and determine additional charges. If additional criminal charges will be preferred, notify desk officer and process initial arrest. Patrol apprehension. If patrol units arrest a perp based solely on a past identification by an investigative unit, then the arrest will be processed by the Detective Bureau. That means no stealing iCards. Understand? DV cops, no stealing iCards. 20814, arrest by UMOS outside the city, not specifically assigned or ordered. UMOS, follow arrest procedure of that police department, okay, that has jurisdiction, and notify operations immediately and prepare report to CO ASAP. Now you remember that this sounds a little bit like line of duty injury in or out of the city. Remember that? It says notify local cops, right? So this kind of says the same thing, right? And then it says notify operations immediately, kind of the same step there. And in line of duty injury, if you're injured line of duty outside the city, then the duty captain will be the investigative supervisor. Here, you're preparing a report for the CO. So, it's kind of like in the same feeling as a line of duty, right? We're going to move on to 208.17. This is change in arrest charge. Arresting officer, notified desk officer or booking officer. Desk officer or booking officer. If online not forwarded, just correct it. If forwarded, prepare arrest report supplement. Original copy of arrest report supplement goes to the data integrity unit. File the yellow copy to precinct OLBS copy, ping to arresting officer. Put facts regarding change in degree of crime on a DD5 Omniform complaint revision. So if you're going to change the charge, that's one thing, but put facts regarding a change in the degree, okay, on a DD5 Omniform complaint revision. Remember that the desk officer fills out the arrest report supplement here. This is from 208.17. In arrest report supplements, it says UMOS do this, but specifically in this section, 208.17, it says change in arrest charge, desk officer forward, it says fill out the arrest report supplement here. Okay, so now we're going to move on to 208.27, which is DATs. There is a lot of material to learn in DATs. We're going to be spending the rest of this video on DATs. We're going to go through DATs, things that automatically disqualify DATs, identification for DATs. Okay, so there's a lot of test questions that could come from here. DATs is something that we do every day now. Okay, so for the remainder of the video, we're going to talk about DATs. We're going to start with the general rules in 208.27. So let's start with the arresting officer. For an E felony, misdemeanor, or violation, inform the prisoner they'll get DAT'd if they qualify. Get ID as per 208.28. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. An active warrant disqualifies, but an active I-card does not. Try to get contact info, residence address, preferred mailing address, phone numbers, etc. Arresting officer either record above information on appropriate forms or inform the desk officer if they refuse to give the information. Desk officer, if they refuse, explain that the info allows the district attorney to contact them for possible participation in pre-arraignment diversion programs and for the Office of Court Administration to send reminders of upcoming court dates. Otherwise, ensure the refusal is indicated as appropriate. Put arrest data in Omniform. Okay? If there are multiple reasons for potential DAT ineligibility, check all the fields that apply. Confer with ID section to see if a previous conviction exists, which raises today's charge to a D felony. Online booking charge will not be changed solely on information received via telephone. What does that mean? Well, they're sort of telling you what it means, and you're supposed to deduce it. It means that you may stick with your original charge, but getting information that raises today's charge to a D felony may disqualify them for a DAT, but you're not going to go in and change your charge. Debrief as early as possible. Request a briefing by precinct detective squad or other investigative unit if appropriate. If DAT eligible and process complete, never hold just to debrief unless you have reasonable suspicion that the perp was involved in another crime. On first platoon, there's no squad. Ensure a supervisor is available to debrief prior to completing the DAT procedure. Right? Do the debriefing first so that when you're done with the DAT, you're not holding him to debrief him when ordinarily you would let him go. So every once in a while in the patrol guide, when they give you the order of the steps, that could be the order that they test you, right? The idea is to get the DAT rolling and then have the person debriefed right away so that your DAT doesn't come back approved. Now you're supposed to let this guy go, and you're holding him so that you can debrief him. So get a supervisor to debrief prior to completing the DAT procedure. Fingerprint prisoner, generate a prisoner movement slip, complete DAT arrest related paperwork. While waiting for fingerprint results, monitor DAT processing in Omniform. If response reads yes, DAT has been approved, print DAT. If response reads no, process an online arrest, right? The DAT's been denied. Process the online arrest and inform prisoner of ineligibility for a DAT. If the response reads DNA owed, notify desk officer and attempt to collect DNA as per 208.72 and continue processing DAT because owing DNA is not a disqualifying factor. Make sure you remember that. If response reads wait, check back at reasonable intervals, not to exceed 30 minutes. After 2 hours, contact Borough Court Section to ascertain status of fingerprint check and request DCJS to expedite fingerprint search. Email paperwork to Borough Court Section and ensure the email subject heading has the arrest number and prisoner's last name. Call the Borough Court Section to confirm receipt of email and get DAT number, return date, time, arraignment part, and court part. Record above information received from Borough Court Section, all on the DAT. Now, here's a little something extra for the arresting officer. It talks about if the computer system is down. So if command computer system becomes non-operational or Borough Court Section supervisor directs, use the snap out, like the old one, use the snap out DAT, notify Borough Court Section supervisor prior to issuing snap out version of the DAT, make DAT returnable to arraignment part of criminal court except if it's returnable to family court, community court, or it's necessary to permit arraignment of all prisoners in the same court part. 3 signatures. The arresting officer sign a DAT, activate body-worn camera, and request prisoner to sign DAT. Okay, they want you to get him signing the DAT on body-worn camera. Okay, and deliver to the desk officer to sign. So the AO signs it, the prisoner signs it, but you catch him signing it on body-worn camera, and you deliver to the desk officer who also signs it. Desk officer debrief, ensure prisoner was debriefed as per 210.18 as appropriate. Either you debrief or ensure any other available supervisor, precinct detective squad, or other investigative unit does it ASAP. It must be done before completion of all DAT procedures. If DAT is complete and no debriefing was done, cut them loose. Never hold just for a debriefing unless you have reasonable suspicion that they're involved in another crime. Check paperwork for accuracy and completeness and ensure they're all noted on arrest checklist. Confirm contact information, resident address, mailing address, phone numbers, emails, etc. has been provided. Sign DAT and return it to the desk officer. Arresting officer, distribute copies of the DAT to defendant, complainant if applicable, and command file. Scan original DAT and send to Borough Court Section. Then it goes in personal file, right? You keep it. Arresting officer, email all arrest-related paperwork to Borough Court Section and ensure subject has arrest number and prisoner's last name. Await call from DA and monitor status through OmniForms prisoner arraignment lookup. Notify desk officer immediately if district attorney's office is no longer accepting arrest paperwork. File all hard copies of arrest-related paperwork in arrest envelope. So it says email all related paperwork. Okay, when they talk about subject here, they're not talking about a person. They're talking about the subject of the email, right? The subject line of the email. Email all arrest-related paperwork to Borough Court Section and ensure subject of the email has arrest number and prisoner's last name. Desk officer, direct AO to comply with 20882 if DA no longer accepting arrest paperwork. Assign arrest to another UMOS if arresting officer is unavailable to speak with the DA's office within 4 days. Ensure assigned officer re-interview complainant, witness, and complies with 20820 turnover arrests. Now, this is also a very important section of DAT. This is 20828 ID standards for a DAT. Now, you notice over the years, the job has really opened up what they'll accept as ID for a DAT. Now, anybody who's hearing the sound of my voice right now on the video, who's an operational cop that makes arrests. So let's take a look at some of them. Arresting officer, establish violators ID and mailing address through observation of the following, not limited to driver's license from any state or country, non-driver photo ID from any state or federal jurisdiction, New York State permit, U.S. military photo ID, valid passport, U.S. or foreign, citizenship or naturalization papers, resident alien card, municipal ID card, including Canadian, public benefit card, such as medical assistance card, food stamp, or any other ID issued by New York State or municipal social service agency, which entitles a person to obtain public assistance benefit under a local, state, or federal program. Okay, so any card, any benefit card from anywhere. Other IDs may be acceptable. If you reasonably suspect that ID is fake, the desk officer makes the final determination. Inform them that knowingly misrepresenting their pedigree info to a police officer with intent to prevent is a crime, and UMOS should charge 190.23 false personation. Do local, state, and federal warrant check as per 20822. Active warrant disqualifies. iCard does not. Do a DMV check through Finest. Continue trying to ID by using department computers or by allowing contact with a third party to obtain ID. Delay for a reasonable amount of time to allow delivery of such documents. If ID is established, follow 20827 DAT. If not, process as an online arrest. Now, they're setting up identification protocols here. But the rules are so loose, they're stopping short of just about saying, we'll take anything. Okay? That never used to be the case, but the job is trying to DAT people now. In the past, they were trying not to DAT people. Now they are trying to DAT people. So we have all this language at the end, don't forget about it, where it says delay for a reasonable amount of time to allow delivery of such documents, right? And then it says continue trying to ID by using department computers or by allowing a contact with a third party to obtain ID, right? So what they're really saying to you there is, try to get somebody to bring it in. That's what they're saying. And then it says delay for a reasonable amount of time to allow these documents to come in. All right, so they're telling you that they're trying to DAT people here. Okay, I mean, look at all the stuff that they take. Okay, but there are things that will automatically deny a DAT. All right, we're going to take a look at those next. Okay, now in 208.81, they have a patrol guide section specifically for DAT disqualifying factors. All right, so John puts them in an acronym here. It's 2D, 5 docs. Here's the short list of crimes and conditions that automatically prevent a DAT. Fail to appear in criminal court in the last 2 years. Distressed. So when they say distressed, they're talking about the person who you're looking to DAT. If they're distressed, they may face harm if relieved, like they need medical care or something like that. Okay? It includes under the influence of drugs or alcohol to the degree that they may endanger themselves or others. Family offense against a member of the same family or household. ID not up to the standards found in what we just covered, 208.28. Violates order of protection. Escape 2, absconding 1, absconding for treatment facility, or bail jumping. DAT disqualified if driver's license may be suspended or revoked for a crime, any misdemeanor or felony in 1192 DWI. Vehicular assault 2, or leaving the scene with injury or prior of that. So any of these things so far, let's go down to the bottom one. Open warrant will disqualify a DAT. Child abuse, neglect, or maltreatment is not DATable. Sex crime, including all attempts or conspiracy to commit. It doesn't specify misdemeanor or felony. It just says sex crime. So, failed to appear in court in the last 2 years. Distressed, they may self-harm. Family offense, ID not up to the standards found in 208, violates order of protection. Escape, driver's license suspended or revoked for a crime, okay, or DWI. Open warrant, child abuse, neglect, or maltreatment. Sex crime, including all attempts or conspiracy to commit. Right? So now, before we finish here, I want to take a look at one other thing in DAT, and that is DAT of hospitalized prisoners. Now, I want to take a look at 208.30, hospitalized prisoner DAT, because there's a couple of weird things in here, and it's not really difficult, but I just want to go over it. There's a lot of like guarding UMOS, desk officer, arresting officer. And so I think if we read it, it seems fairly straightforward to me, but there's a couple of things in here that they make reference to. I want to go over what they mean. So if you see it on the test, you know what they're talking about. So hospitalized prisoner DAT, guarding UMOS. Notified desk officer if prisoner is sufficiently recovers to be issued a DAT. So they're already presuming here that this prisoner was hospitalized and he could have been in there for 6 hours or 6 days, right? But guarding UMOS, notified desk officer if prisoner sufficiently recovers to be issued a DAT. So you call the desk, and you're like, hey, they're going to discharge this guy. He's fine, okay? Desk officer, direct patrol supervisor to determine condition and duration in hospital. That sort of implies that the desk officer has to go to the hospital and visit the prisoner and the guarding UMOS. It doesn't say that explicitly. As a matter of fact, there's not even a step into 208.30 for the patrol supervisor, but it says direct desk officer, direct patrol supervisor to determine condition. Does that mean that you call the guarding UMOS? It doesn't really say. Okay, but the patrol supervisor is the one who's basically verifying what the guarding cop called the desk to tell him. Okay, so maybe you call the cop, maybe you visit there, determine condition and duration in the hospital, direct guarding UMOS to prepare DAT if the defendant qualifies. Guarding UMOS, obtain return date per borough procedures and ensure that it's after the tentative release date, right? That's the release date from the hospital, right? You don't want to have him return tomorrow when he's not getting in the hospital until Friday. So that makes kind of common sense. Guarding UMOS, obtain return date from the borough per borough procedures and ensure that it's after the release date. Notify borough court section regarding DAT serial number, return date, returnable court date, and time of release. Desk officer, have AO notified, right? Because we presume at this point that somebody else is watching this guy. Distribute DAT as per 20827. Place information on OLBS or arrest report supplement, right? This is, again, we see the desk officer preparing a DAT'd hospitalized prisoner. Remember that from the previous slide. DAT serial number, return date, court returnable to, and forward as usual. Arresting officer. Day prior to return date, determine if defendant is in hospital. So you're supposed to check on him to see if he really got out when he was supposed to get out of the hospital. If purpose still in the hospital, obtain anticipated date of discharge, notify borough court section supervisor, right? Because obviously he's not going to make court if he's still in the hospital. This is kind of a weird thing that I wanted to read with you. Borough court section supervisor, get new return date and notify roll call clerk at AO's command. That seems odd to me, okay? Borough court section supervisor, get new return date and notify roll call clerk at AO's command. Now, who knows if you get tested on something that the borough court section supervisor does? It's highly unlikely, but it's possible. And that's a weird step. Okay, roll call clerk, make entry in command diary, notify AO if required to appear, desk officer of hospital precinct, telephone, have defendant notified of new return date. Okay, folks, so that's going to be it for lesson 7. This is arrest part 1. Next week is going to be lesson 8. That's arrest part 2. I'll see you in the classes. Stay off Instagram and Facebook and start studying. Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, that's my time.